everybody, to Commiserate 2020. Here we are. Cinema, why not the nose? I ask you, why not the nose? Well, my name's John Anderson. I'm a documentary filmmaker based in Chicago. Primarily do music docs. Most recently, about a kid that grew up about a mile away. A white guy who grew up in Hyde Park at 61st and Dorchester. I guess that would be sort of in that direction, a little bit south and east of us. Paul Butterfield loved the blues, and one summer, the summer of '60, decided to teach himself to play the blues harmonica, and went out the whole summer to Promontory Point, again almost a stone's throw from here, and sat down on the rocks there and taught himself to play harmonica, and went on to blues greatness. And I made a film about him called Horn from the Heart. It's available on all the streaming services and by disc and so forth. I've also worked with Brian Wilson and Bonnie Raitt and Eric Clapton and Paul McCartney and Bob Dylan and Kanye West, and I've got a Grammy nomination for my work with Brian Wilson. I've got an Emmy. Come on in. Got an Emmy for my work with the Chicago Public Schools, and an International Monitor Award for my video work with my little rock and roll combo called Cleaning Lady. It was about 3 years ago. I found out about a woman in Australia named Tammy Burnstock, who was making a film about smell-o-vision. Smell-o-vision being the 1960 process that promised to deliver synchronized sense to moviegoers. You know, in time with the action, the concept was augment that reality with sense, with fancy sense. And my interest was piqued. It was something that had occurred to me as to why not integrate scent with the movies? And I'd heard a little bit about smell-o-vision, but not that much. But she got me completely up to date with it, and showed me her excitement and enthusiasm over how scent can work and how scent can affect our lives, can affect our interaction with the arts, how it can just enhance our existence. And I was pulled in by her passion of it. I could say, probably summarize my work history as being all about combining music with movies and seeing what they can form together. Hers in the same way is about scent and movies. And those parallels were immediately obvious to me, and I said, heck yes, she needed to have an interview shot up in Deerfield for her film. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And here we are 3 years later, and we've just finished a feature-length documentary about smell-o-vision, about the inventor of it, a guy named Hans Lau. It's called Inglorious Smell-o-vision. Tammy is a scented storyteller and a filmmaker, and she joins us today from Sydney, Australia.
It's 6 a.m. here, so it's still dark outside, but it's fantastic to be here-ish with you in Chicago, which is where Smell-o-vision first premiered, and we hope to bring it back there. So hello.
Hello, Tammy. In many ways, cinema is an antiquated medium. In this age of virtual reality and augmented reality and home entertainment systems and unlimited choice available online, you have to get there. You have to get to the movies. It snowed here last week. The wind chill average was probably about 27 degrees. You got to get to the theater. You got to pay $14 to get in. You got to pay, $16 for the popcorn and a drink. The seats are covered with God knows what. You can't pause the action. There are drawbacks. It used to be that the big screen made the difference, of course, but now with the larger home screens in everybody's house and the former selling point that cinema had being 5.1 sound, that too you can get in your house and generally even better in your house. You've got to think that for cinema to remain relevant, it needs to offer something to people that they can't get anywhere else, tucked away in their electronic villages of one.
Yeah, it's kind of what was happening in the time when Smell-o-vision first came out in 59-60, the two competing systems, Roma and Smell-o-vision. And it was just, they were having to compete with newly invented television. So they were having to, there were all sorts of kind of crazy things going on to try and attract people back to that communal experience. And I guess part of my passion for all of this is that I still think that there's something special about being together in a room and experiencing something together, even if you do meditation and you can do it at home or by the beach, but if you do it in a room full of other people, there's an energy there. And it's the same with music. You can't compare to live streaming concert to actually being there with other people and interacting and just being in that space with other people. So I think, smell is a way to bring people together, in a venue, in a cinema or other places in artwork. And also, it's the other thing that I'm fascinated with is our most primitive sense. And I mean, there's so much talk around, sense and memory and emotion and how it can really transport you like nothing else to another place and time. And so, we just want to give you a taste of that today.
Let's do an experiment. Some of you now have spritzers. Take the lids off of them. I'll show you how to operate them, and I'm going to give you a cue to spritz them into the air for us.
How do you spritz it?
Oh, were they already passed out?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You can get one. They'll come around again.
All right.
But pull the lid off. And the people who have spritzers stand up because it's cooler to have it kind of shower down on. Okay?
Oh my God.
And hold it up above your head. Keep it level because there's just a little bit at the bottom. And you'll need to hit it probably about 3 times to prime it until something gets through. And once you feel that it's getting through, spritz it 3 times. And then the people who have the fans should waft for a good 10-15 seconds. And the goal is to kind of make it gently fall down on us. Okay? So go for it. Do a good 2 or 3 spritzes and make sure they get out there. Nicely done. I smell it. Nicely wafted, so really nice wafting. What do you smell?
I'm not sure.
Rose, did you say?
Yeah, flower.
Flower and associations. What associations come to you when you smell this? So, getting clean, yes. Is it a perfume type scent, or is it something that you might find on a product? Wally, is it a perfume quality to you?
It's a cross between perfume and if I just got flowers from my sweetie.
It smells like a grandma.
Smells like a grandma. Tammy, did you hear that? Smells like a grandma. Well, it shows how, kind of reinforces what Tammy was saying, how personal scent is. Everybody kind of has it from the same family. I'm not sure that that'll be the case with the ones that we have coming up. But, how it affects you and how deeply it does has to do with your past and what you associate it with. But it goes to show you that maybe if you were to deliver these hard-to-corral scent molecules and deliver them to moviegoers in the right doses at the right time, you might have something there. You might be able to enhance the experience. It's already happening in other fields of art around the world. Kat Jones is an Australian artist who uses it for her sculpture in Australia. Odette Toilette is in the UK doing installations and doing still art. There's a woman named Jackie Ford Morey, an American, who is pioneering the VR field, virtual reality, and she, after you strap your mask on, she's got a scent collar you put around your neck. And as you create your experience, the right amount, a little scent comes out, and a little puff here, a little puff there to further grab you into it. So, there's a lot of ways that it's working. And Tammy is in that same way. She is the pioneer of scent in cinema. She happens to know all these people. They're all in our film, as is an author named Avery Gilbert, who wrote kind of the scent and art book called What the Nose Knows. And his saying is, the time for smell is now.
It is. I mean, it's funny because basically, I've made most of my life has been in children's preschool television, so this is all kind of a new, wonderful adventure for me. I've met some amazing people who've helped to kind of had these great screenings around the world. Cecily Wilson-Brown from the Institute for Art and Olfaction. I'm sure people in the audience who are involved in smell know all about. It's like the Queen Bee smell in LA. She led a scent team which has seen us have screenings in, for in the UK for the Media Museum, for the Danish Film Institute in Copenhagen, and then our brilliant big screening of the original television film at the Film Classic Film Festival at the Cinema Dome in Hollywood, which was pretty amazing to actually pull that off. It was very exciting. The feedback so far has been really encouraging. People seem to like it.
getting to be a part of the movie where you can spray your own plastic like we all have a child.
But smell-o-vision had a far different impact on the world when it premiered in 1960. You're going to let that roll. Is it roll? Oh, sorry. Hit pause for a second. We're just a little bit delayed. There's a delay on the... We good? Okay. It debuted in 1960. It was on a big budget Hollywood whodunit called Scent of Mystery. It seemed to have everything going for it, and as much as it had an Academy Award-winning director named Jack Cardiff, who was a guy that Tammy interviewed back in the early 1980s when she was a student. She interviewed Jack. It had a great cast, Peter Lorre and people like Elizabeth Taylor. It was Michael Todd, the organization's follow-up to Around the World in 80 Days. That had just come out a year earlier, and it was the big hyped follow-up to that. It was shot in Spain on a very big budget in widescreen, as you can see. And it debuted here in Chicago at the CineStage Theater, owned by Michael Todd, which is on Dearborn, between Lake and Randolph, where the Goodman Theater is now. And thousands of Chicagoans came down to catch a sniff of the Liz and Peter Lorre, and for some reason Milton Berle showed up. And the legendary photojournalist Art Shea, who I had originally shot an interview for Tammy back in the early days, he was here to cover all of this for Life magazine. You know, first they moved, then they talked, and on this night they smelled. And the film bombed. It just died a miserable death. It became the first and last film ever to be presented in smell-o-vision. Time magazine called it one of the worst 100 ideas of all time. The reviews were brutal, and the process was doomed to be a footnote in cinema history. That is, until Tammy came along. And our film, our scented documentary, is called Inglorious Smell-o-vision, the true story of the godfather of scented cinema. And is there a chicken over here?
Oh, I've got to upload this birds. It's morning. It's
Oh, the
great.
Well, in the film, she goes about finding out what went wrong the first time around with smell-o-vision. And then 60 years later, with the assistance of its inventor's daughter, Hans Laub's daughter, Carmen, and the daughter of the producer of the film, Michael Todd Jr., they were behind her. Her goal was to find out if 60 years later, smell-o-vision can work. Here's the trailer you need for it. Little out of sync.
I'm going to tell you a true story about the godfather of smell-o-vision, Swiss scientist and inventor Hans Laub. His smell brain, a 3-ton contraption designed to deliver scents to movie audiences on cue, and a long-lost feature film, Scent of Mystery, the original Hollywood stinker.
Smell-o-vision was like being a bystander at a street accident. The inventors of the process, you might picture down in the basement, piping up orange blossom scent over the audience's face. You couldn't help but wish that James Joyce was there to get all this down.
Even Elizabeth Taylor couldn't save the film, and Scent of Mystery marked the beginning and the end of smell-o-vision. 30 years later, I finally got to see Scent of Mystery for myself. I also met audience members who had smelled the film.
It was one of the greatest movie experiences ever. There was the smell of garlic and tobacco, and the train smoke was fantastic. You know, you felt like you were there.
I wondered if the critics had been wrong, and over 50 years after its debut, I made it my mission to restage the film in glorious smell-o-vision and find out. As I looked more deeply into the smell-o-vision story, I discovered a tale of innovation, entrepreneurs, and shattered dreams.
In a nutshell, it broke him. That ended his ambition, that ended anything that he was really going to be able to achieve. And he ended up dying broke, penniless, with debts. In 2016, Tammy Burnstock did a reboot of The Scent of Mystery in Los Angeles. And people came from every corner of the world to be part of this.
Well, shut up.
Hans's idea did in fact explode to be this really international thing. I can't believe this is happening, excuse me. If he were alive to see that, he would roll up his sleeves and go in there and tell them how to do it better.
You might be asking why it failed the first time around. There were a few reasons, few of which, none of which had much at all to do with Hans, really. The first, to me, was what happened behind the scenes. Hans, the inventor, is a real swashbuckler. He was a crazy cat who was a gambler and a race car driver and had a penchant for young blondes, and he was he not only dreamt up the concept, but he also created the scents. He created the scents, and then he, through a series of tubes and shimmies and so forth, he got the scents out to the people in the audience, over the course of a 90-minute film, sometimes as much as 150 feet away. He had the good fortune in 1939, 1940 to meet Michael Todd Sr., who was a burlesque producer at the time, a success. He had a show at the 3940 World's Fair in New York called the Hot Mikado, which was a black representation of the Mikado, and it was a big hit. His star was rising, and it stuck with him. He saw Hans's film that was at the festival, that was at the World's Fair. It was a short from Switzerland called My Dream, and it stuck with him. And 20 years later, he decided to use that momentum from Around the World in 80 Days to bring smell-o-vision to the world, which really made sense because he had had success with other similar pioneering techniques in cinema up till then. He was behind a sound system called Todd AO Sound that took over the industry. He also helped be the progenitor of Cinerama. That was his baby, the first real widescreen, seriously wrapping around you type screen. So it made sense that smell-o-vision might be up his alley. By the time Around the World 80 Days had come around, he had married Elizabeth Taylor. He was on top of the world, had the world on a string. Just as the film was about to go into production, he died in a plane crash. And it was cast a pall over the show business industry. He had to hand the reins of his company over to his son, Michael Todd Jr., who was a dutiful son, who did the best that he could, but he didn't have the passion for it that Michael Todd Sr. did, and nor did he have the personality to overcome some of the snark that came along in the way of the press when it was coming to fruition. So those two things really conspired to keep smell-o-vision from succeeding and to cross the finish line.
The words of Carmen about Anne's dying broke, penniless with debts comes to mind quite a lot when I've been working on this crazy project for a number of years, because another of the major difficult things that, for anyone who's tried scenting, AR, VR, whatever, is that we can't digitalize it yet. And there's lots of fascinating research all around the world about the best scent delivery systems, but I'm happy to talk to people about that later because I'm really fascinated with all of those efforts. But it's definitely challenging. But I was also going to say that despite the commercial failure of smell-o-vision in 1960, and there is the reviews and everything else, there were people in the audience that we interviewed for the film that absolutely loved the film. You could just see the light going on in their eyes when they relive the experience of cinema with set when they were young. And I think the other thing that I love about this project is once people get involved, somehow, just starting to be aware of smell seems to awaken our dormant sense of smell, and the world suddenly is a much richer place.
One of the unique things about Scent of Mystery was that it was written for scent. The film was written for scent, and they used some really interesting applications of scent to communicate plot points. It wasn't a gratuitous overlay as it really was in Polyester with John Waters and that sort of thing. This was really thought out. Those of you with the number 2 spray, please stand up. Prepare to spritz over your head. Hold your thing perpendicular, Wally, perpendicular to the ground, and straight up and down, and spritz and waft, please. Please waft, waft. Keep wafting straight. Some more great wafting happening over there. Okay. Yeah, it's getting over here. Travels pretty fast. How does that one smell?
Jasmine.
Jasmine, you say?
Maybe it's sunscreen.
Sunscreen.
Oh, yeah. Little citrus.
Citrus, To me, it smells, like a big shoulders 80s perfume kind of, suits you well. In fact, it's what I gave my mother every year for Christmas in the 80s and 90s. Giorgio, yeah, it's really Giorgio. Let me continue through here. Oh, and the way it was used as a plot point in the film was there were 2 women dressed similarly, and one was Elizabeth Taylor and one was her decoy, and the scents, would always be associated with one, and you never knew which one was which, but this was the reveal scene where they put a little number down in the corner that said spray number 6 right now, and they all sprayed her scent, and everyone knew, oh, it was her all along. Yeah. They also used for example, there's a bad guy, a would-be assassin who smoked a pipe. That's all we knew about him. So when we smelled his scent, whether there was someone on screen, or sometimes they even did it where the guy was in the neighborhood but not on screen. So it was a subtle off-screen scent thing. And it just gets you thinking about if you can control this stuff, and if you think it through and do it smart, you could really have a great time in the movie theater. Let's go to the scene setters. Yeah, another way that it was used was to set giant locations. What we did in our film was we set up a couple of the scent of Spain is basically what this is, and we also did something that was train smoke that was going through. And then I've got number 3. This one, there was just a little bit of, this was professionally made, unlike the others which were made. This is by the Saskia Wilson Brown, who is the director of the Institute for Art and Olfaction in Los Angeles, and there's a real scent made. She made this in the tiniest little quantity, and I think I've diluted it right. I'm going to do a couple of twists over here, and then over there. Thanks for watching, because it helps clear the old ones away. You're right. Let me move closer to it. I'll try to kind of far from me. I'll get as much as I can. Get a nice walk through them in front of the box. I'm not going to do yes. Now, when we do scented screenings of our film, we have fans there that clear the stuff out in between each scent. I don't quite have that luxury now. I can smell it. Oh, well, I can really smell it on my finger. Let me put some on your finger. Yeah, man, put them on your finger. It's really like soft. It really is. What is it? Can you smell your finger? I just put it on their fingers, Tammy. Whoa. Smell my finger. Anybody have any guesses as to what this might be? This one had a specific scent it was going for. You'd never know. Let me show you the scene, and maybe you can get. Oh. Yeah. Well, basically that's it. It smells a little like dirt, horse hooves. I mean, seriously, grass. Couldn't it be that? It's without, you know, I mean, if you're in the mood, you can really see how this might.
It smells outdoors.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we need to spray this one on people. You know, when people mind in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, this was created by Saskia Wilson Brown. I ran the Bulls when I was 21. It smelled like fear. I mean, it smelled like fear. I don't remember what I smelled, but you know what they do is they put you in this holding pen. It's about 100 yards ahead of the bulls, and then behind you, up this cobblestone road, are the bulls, and those are the big, strong, honking bulls that they're doing the bullfight later that day. These aren't timid bulls. They're all going crazy. And they sounded this one horn, I think, and that's when we all started running. And then about a minute later, they sounded a gun that guy just shot, and a horn, and the bulls run. And I mean, you could hear them behind you. You could feel the floor, feel the cobblestone moving. I'm running as fast as I can, trying to keep my distance, and you know, I didn't see anybody fall down, but somebody's drunk. I mean, it's 7 in the morning they have you running. These people are all hungover from the night before. This isn't an afternoon type thing where you have a chance to get your wits together. Anyway, so I could hear them, you know, I didn't run as fast as I could because I would have run into the backs of the other people and that would have been dangerous. So I trusted everyone, and we got in, and then basically you go in through the entrance to the bull ring and you run through the bull ring. And then, I mean, I swear it was less than 20 seconds later these bulls came through. And maybe it was closer to 5 or 6. They kind of went through, and you know, they all went off to the side, and they all go into the pen, and then that afternoon they used them for the bullfight. But my finger is kind of what it smelled like. We can distribute the scent strips now, the grand finale of scents. You know, you can see that there are challenges in delivering scent. Lavender to some people might suggest a field in France. To somebody else it might suggest your grandmother's laundry basket. We found that here, that we're all smelling the same thing. We both smell different things, and we have greatly different associations with them. These things are scent strips. These are made for a scent joke, which is another way that scent was used in the film. Let's take a listen. If anybody wants to do...
What are you drinking? Let's keep that heads. Special coffee, very strong. Squawker's martini. Yes, I know. Cognac. Not at the moment. Do you have pour it?
Coffee, maybe a little cognac in it, if I can.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. Did you get that? Did everybody get one? I mean, you could see how that could. Yeah. Wow. Well, I think we hit a bullseye there. You can keep them as souvenirs, or we'll come around and collect them too. The people that I've met in the process of making this film, from Tammy all the way around, they're just scent mavericks, seem to have larger-than-life personalities, and that applies to the inventor of smell-o-vision too, Hans Lau, who, like I say, he would be in his kitchen just like that, and he'd chain smoke, and he would invent stuff, and he would create the scents, and there's his smell brain, which we'll see in a moment. He's thinking about all the tubing he's going to need to get it to where the people are and get it to everybody at the same time. You don't want to get your scents in the balcony after you got them in the front row. And there they go. And at the heart of his action was the smell brain, which is this thing right here. This was the producer, Michael Todd's son, Michael Todd Jr., and there's Hans. And there's one smell brain that still exists in the world, and it's in Carmen Lau's New York City apartment. And of course, we had to get that into the film. So here's that clip.
So here we have the remaining half of the smell-o-vision unit. We're not quite sure if this was actually used in the film itself, but it's the one that demonstrates what the thing actually looked like, or what most of it looked like. It is now our treasure. And if you look on that side, you'll see there's an area where a large hose would be inserted to pump air through, and that would make all these nice toys down here go round and round and round, bringing up the pressure to rotate this table that had all the bottles in it. All the different scents would be in here, and I think you could tell the pressure of what was happening up here with these gauges. This is the smell-o-vision unit, such as it is, representative of the one of its kind.
Yeah, I guess what Hans, I think he was just at the forefront of this thinking. He was just so far ahead of his time, 60 years ago, and what John and I and the team, want to bring is this kind of begin to share again this idea that how much scent can add to immersive experience. And I mean, obviously there are challenges and lots of people are kind of working in the field, but yeah, I think the power of smell is something that just we want to share with the world.
And when it comes to cinema, why not the nose, eh? Yeah. We've got a few minutes here. I wanted to open it up for questions if anybody has them.
So at the website, what will someone find there?
You'll find
Like the trailer and all?
the trailer. You'll find a more complete description of the film. There's a great blog where all the people who contributed to it talk about what they did and what their relationship with scent is and how it awakened their sense, if that's the case. And there's lots of little Easter eggs that you'll find, and lots of little sidebars and links to my website and that sort of thing. Yeah.
What are your plans for your Scented documentary? What are your plans for your Scented documentary?
Well, we're going to take it on the road. We're going to take it on the road. Tammy is lining up some New Zealand shows where she's going to take it. We're waiting to hear back from a lot of film festivals. There's a screening in Brunswick, Australia. Tammy, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Byron Bay. We've had those screenings in the hippie capital of Australia in Byron Bay in the end of the month, and that's going to be a very exciting event. Hopefully one of many. Hopefully we'll come to Chicago one day.
Yes. Jazz. That's right. Well, Jazz has said maybe there's a shot we can get a screening here at U of C. And I'm going to be trying other universities too. And any place that, doesn't mind smelling up their cinema for a couple hours. What else? I got time for one or two more if you got something.
How are you going to do your smell-o-vision? Kind of like with the fans?
Yeah. It's kind of, this is the mini setup, but yeah, I mean, I think we have 8 scents, and you've got the fans, and some of them, like the atmospheric ones, we do with these scent beads that we put in front of the fans and let them blow through, and they really create, nice big things. And, the trick is finding quiet fans, because you got to have them running in between times, too. Go ahead,
I can't hear, but I just in relation to that, I think that there are 4 different ways that we propagate scent within the cinema. But one of the main things that we want to make it is very participatory. I think it's kind of not an earnest experience. It really is very interactive, and some of them are edibles, some of them are atmospheric smells that are fan projected, and some of them are sprays. So it's very, very much about the experience as well as the film. That's what we're aiming for.
That's what we hope. Well, I want to thank Tammy for joining us. Thank you for coming here. Thank Jazz. Commiserate 2020 back next year, and keep an eye open on our website for future screenings. I'd love for you to see the whole film. Thank you. But yeah, that last scent we need to